When most people think about Egypt, they think about the Great Pyramids looming in the distance, holding ancient knowledge and mysteries just waiting to be discovered. It seems that even with some fears of ancient curses taking over the world, researchers and archaeologists continue their explorations into these elaborate deep tombs. These tombs, mostly housing royals and the rich, have even lured treasure hunters and grave robbers to the area. Thankfully, these days the Supreme Council of Antiquities oversees and approves any and all excavations, ensuring that all explorations are for education and not monetary gain. Ancient Egyptian civilization continues to influence life today. Things such as architecture and art, even social hierarchy, have deep roots in this culture. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at these 3 mysterious ancient Egyptian discoveries. 4,500-year-old teenager found. Ancient Egyptian burials usually bring up one visual. Great ornate sarcophagi or purposefully wrapped mummies come to mind. The most famous being King Tutankhamun with his very decorated and well-recognized sarcophagus. However, there are many burials throughout this area that do not adhere to such strict and ceremonial burials. Perhaps archaeologists were expecting to find another mummy of a great ruler during a recent exploration of the Maiden Pyramid. The Maiden Pyramid stands on the Giza Plateau just outside of Cairo. Although most of the pyramid has collapsed, researchers believe that at least part of it was built for the pharaoh Snefru. Snefru reigned from around 2575 to 2551 BC. Snefru had built several step pyramids around Egypt. Most of these were called step pyramids, that is, the sides moved up in a step-like fashion instead of a smooth incline. Some archaeologists believe Snefru built so many pyramids to research how to make a true pyramid, testing out different methods before finally getting it right. The Maiden Pyramid was also once a step pyramid, having later been converted to a true pyramid by Snefru himself. Snefru's son and successor, Khufu, later would build the Great Pyramid of Giza, which is known as the tallest pyramid ever constructed. It's no wonder that archaeologists are drawn to the area. On a recent exploration of the pyramid and the area surrounding it, archaeologists found something they weren't expecting. In a statement made in February of 2019, Omar Zaki, Egypt's Minister of Antiquities, announced a discovery. In the shadows of the pyramids, the ruins of a cemetery was found. Inside of a brick wall believed to encase the old cemetery, 2 animal heads and 3 ceramic vases were unearthed. It is believed that these could have been used for sacrifice or a funeral, although it is unclear as to whom they were for. And possibly the most interesting find was a young girl. The remains of a 13-year-old girl were found buried nearby, though not close enough to the animal heads or vases to make researchers believe they were for her. Although the time of her burial remains unclear, her age was determined by dating her bones. The nearby Maiden Pyramid goes back roughly 4,600 years, and researchers believe she may have been buried around that time, though that is hard to prove. The girl's body was found in a squatting position. Besides her body, her grave was empty. There were no additional human remains nor grave goods found with her. Grave goods usually consist of the deceased personal possessions, items meant to help with the journey to the afterlife, or offerings for the gods. The presence of these items can sometimes give a glimpse into who the deceased was in their life. The lack of this young girl's grave goods means her identity could forever be a mystery. We may never know what gave her such importance to be buried so close to a pharaoh's pyramid. The mystery of the bird mummies. The practice of Egyptian mummification goes back to almost 2800 BC. Religious beliefs dictated that a well-preserved body was the first step to having a fruitful afterlife. While it was mainly reserved for pharaohs and other royalty, animals have been found as well. These included cats, crocodiles, mice, and mongoose. Some of these animals were found mummified along humans, but one animal in particular received a very different treatment. This animal was the sacred bird known as the ibis. The ibis bird represented the god Thoth, the god of wisdom, magic, judgment, and even writing. To ask for Thoth's favour, one would offer up a mummified ibis. More than 4 million of these birds were found mummified in the Tuna el Gabel catacombs alone. Another 1.7 million were found in the ancient burial ground of Saqqara. The sheer number of these birds had scientists baffled. Hor of Sebennytos, a priest and scribe from the 2nd century BC, had written about feeding a large number of ibis birds, some tens of thousands, bread and clover. Some researchers believed this indicated the birds were bred for the purpose. Sally Wassef, a researcher with Griffith University of Australia, and her team set out to prove just that. Her team collected DNA from 14 mummified ibises from Egypt as well as 26 DNA samples from wild birds around Africa today. When analysing these samples, Wassef and her team discovered that the genetic diversity in DNA in both the mummified birds and wild birds was strikingly similar. Wassef goes on to explain that if the ancient ibises were bred, the genetic diversity among them would be lower due to inbreeding. This study suggested that the birds may have been captured and held until the time of their sacrifice. She goes on to theorize that having a lake or wetland near a temple would easily draw the ibises, especially if they were consistently fed. There was even a swamp near Tuna el Gabel and a lake near Saqqara to back up this theory. Ancient DNA expert Pontus Skoglund suggested another theory. According to Skoglund, if an ibis hatchery was large enough, the DNA pool could remain large and without too much inbreeding. Another possibility could be that wild birds could have entered the hatchery and bred with the captive ibises. Wassef, however, has stated that no hatchery large enough for this to occur has been discovered, making her findings probably the most likely. It is believed that a small number of ibises could have been bred by humans to be used in the temples of Thoth, but that most of the mummified birds came from the wild. In one final bit of evidence, it was found that many of the mummified ibis birds actually turned out to be faked, wooden birds with some feathers attached, and with a large hatchery of birds at their disposal, this would have been unnecessary. The mystery of the nonsense hieroglyphics. For decades, a group of Polish archaeologists have been working to excavate the Saqqara necropolis, or City of the Dead. This necropolis was in the ancient capital of Memphis. Inside is filled with ornate tombs, obvious that this particular necropolis was reserved for royalty. Nearby, in a dig taking place in September of 2018, Egyptologist Kamil Karaskovitz and his team were working in an area between the Pyramid of Djoser, the oldest pyramid in the world, and the Dry Moat, a long rectangular ditch surrounding the pyramid. It was here they discovered something out of the ordinary. When tombs of royalty or other important people are uncovered, they are often filled with grave goods symbolizing their importance. Some are even labeled with hieroglyphics. Modern hieroglyphics have been around since roughly the 32nd century BC, with the first full sentence appearing in the 28th century BC. The written language consists of over 1,000 distinct characters. With this ancient language unlocked, researchers can decipher all kinds of things about the tombs they decorate, including who they belonged to. That was until the dig near the Pyramid of Djoser. Here, the team found roughly 500 simple burials. These burials were simple and in no way as neatly done as those of the royals. One could even call them clumsy. It is thought that this could have been a burial site for the working or middle-class people. The team went on to say that the embalming was very basic, and the bodies were placed directly into pits in the sand or into now much decayed wooden coffins. Although the coffins had much damage and were often found empty from looters, one coffin remained intact enough for the team to study. On the lid, where the name of the deceased would often go, were what is best to be referred to as imitation hieroglyphics. They didn't make one bit of sense. The researchers believed that possibly the painter was illiterate and simply tried to recreate glyphs they had seen before. Furthermore, figures of Anubis, guardian of the underworld, were painted in blue instead of his usual black. They described the coffin as beautifully clumsy. Some believe that although the burials are simple and nowhere near the grandeur of the royal, that everyday people still practice the same funeral practices, or even that the funerals of the royal were mimicked without pure understanding. As we have come to learn, the mummification and burial process held great religious beliefs in the Egyptian culture, great tombs and burials aimed at supplying a glorious afterlife. Maybe this was just one person's go at giving their loved one a chance at having one as well. But what do you make of these interesting ancient Egyptian discoveries? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section below and help us by growing this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.